started wars, stopped wars, and made the evil tremble in their tracks. It's lovely. It's also been called a debased, grotesque, monstrous mischild of art. It's fun. So, I would have to say that we are experiencing a golden renaissance of the printing of graphic arts. I suspect part of this is due to the fact that we're experiencing a rush as we go into the digital of people taking that last chance to get their stuff onto paper. There's stuff now available on paper that should have been available 50 years ago that you should take every advantage in the world of grabbing, clutching to your chest, and running to the door with. Beauties. What's your current favorite that you've found recently?
Recently?
Just something that you would tell somebody, you know, grab a wad of cash and head to the store.
Gosh, I haven't really seen too much recently. Well, the last thing I bought is actually the Star Trek Legion crossover in terms of any kind of comic book. And that's okay.
Oh, but just in terms of the graphics itself, have you seen the complete Walt Kelly?
No.
All right, for those who are not familiar with the history of comic books, Walt Kelly, the creator of Pogo, this was the man who stood up to Senator Joe before it was fashionable. You may have seen that movie that came out a few years ago where they were talking about the Army McCarthy hearings and the brave TV reporter that stood up to him and so on and so forth. Yes, he was brave. And yes, it's yeah. Walt Kelly did it alone months before this TV reporter jumped on the bandwagon, risked his entire career to do it alone, lost something like 75% of the newspapers that carried his fledgling comic strip in order to basically stand there and bellow, "The emperor has no friggin' pants on at all." There were people who were screaming, not just for his dismissal, his banning from the papers, but from his actual blood for daring to criticize Senator Joe McCarthy. And he persevered. The papers that backed him continued to back him, and within a year, he had actually doubled the number of papers carrying Pogo. And within 5 years, Pogo was in the top 5 carried strips in the country. He was right. And they discovered it. Pogo Possum.
Everybody really knows what time it is.
Mild-mannered, right-thinking possum who sat there and would just cut through any kind of bullshit in the world with such a wonderful, simple sort of logic that would just go straight to the heart of the problem. As he said, we have met the enemy and he is us. Kelly didn't take sides. He criticized everybody. If you were stupid, Kelly would sit there and go, you may have been my friend, but you just made a mistake. And he wasn't nasty, he wasn't hostile, but he would do it with a gentle humor that you had to just sit there and go, yep, Okay. Brilliant artwork. He came out of the Disney studios. Magnificent stuff. His granddaughter has spent the last 20 years collecting every known piece of Walt Kelly artwork from the Pogo strips, including rarities, stuff that people thought just no longer even existed, reconstructed every single strip. I'm a Pogo collector, and my wife got me this for Christmas, and I thought, okay, that's nice to have it all in one volume. I got into this, and I realized with anger and delight that I only had half the stuff in there, and I thought I had a complete collection. It's amazing. It's fantastic. She managed to collect stuff that just, it's complete. It's one of the reasons it was delayed for this long, because she kept finding more stuff. You will read through this and you will be treated to, I just don't even know how to describe it. It is a simple, easygoing, gentle country humor, and I dislike country humor. And yet, I can read this without the resentment that country humor usually brings to me.
Country humor, did you enjoy Little Abner at all?
Little Abner, initially, I did like, and then after the first 3 or 4 years, it got very mean-spirited, and I disliked it.
Made me think of it here, the news recently. I don't know if you're aware, the Coach Calipari has been going around with the trophy, the national championship trophy, to all the different cities in the state. And in Pikeville, they gave him a plaque with the key of the city on it. They had a couple of typos on it. That's why everybody's bringing it up in the news. 2 typos. One is just apostrophe, it's where it doesn't belong. And the other is they left off the E and the. And so I saw 2 people giving comments on Facebook, and I'm like, what's the big deal? That's the way they spell the in Dogpack. Anybody that's read Little Abner would know that.
Yeah, but
that's also been collected.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There were like 30 or 40 volumes of that. I have the first 5 or 6 of those, and they're really worth having and worth studying. But Cap got very arrogant and very abusive after like the first 3 or 4 years. He basically started running a studio, and his assistants were doing most of the artwork. And he had some brilliant assistants. I mean, Frazetta worked in his studio. But he himself decided to get political, and he took sides. He got very obnoxious. It became his tool for, you disagree with me, I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah, I think he owns the right to fear with Falls Dick.
Yeah.
I've only seen one little story of that, and I don't know what he was trying to do with it, but this one is the poison bean one. So Fosdick went around shooting everybody who's eating the poison beans. Mm-hmm. Instead of simply walking over and taking the beans from them and telling them they're poisoned, he gave them away, he just shoot them instead.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was trying to get a point other than the fact that, well, Fosdick was an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, but the Pogo strip is worth picking up. That came out, as I said, about 4 or 5 months ago. Let's see, some other good stuff that's come out recently. Well, Girl Genius. You picked up on Girl Genius?
Yeah.
Okay. Phil Folio, fan favorite from the word go. You can look at this online. He updates twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week when he's got more time to himself. The premise of the strip is mad scientists are real. They run the world. It's a steampunk planet, and the nations are ruled by mad scientists who have their crazy ideas and they construct their inventions and go to war with each other. And the rest of us kind of cower around the edges and pray that they don't run us over with a large, giant robot that's running amok. One family decided to try to stop this and try to regulate it, and they became known for not only their beneficence, but the fact that they bred true. Their children were also mad scientist geniuses, or sparks as they were called. And this, of course, made them exceptionally dangerous, because you could at least count on the fact that if they reproduced, their children wouldn't be as dangerous as the parents, and you could overthrow them. But these were very powerful, and they basically eliminated a lot of the dangerous sparks until they were finally eliminated. And the world has settled down more or less under an extremely powerful spark who's more or less running things. And then it looks like a remaining member of that family has reappeared, which is causing all sorts of problems. Not the least of which is the fact that that family had created an army of nearly indestructible, almost immortal soldiers, which are kind of like a cross between Superman and Three Stooges. And they've been acting as mercenaries. They were fiercely loyal to the family, but with the family gone, they've been acting as mercenaries. But if the family comes back, they're all going to drop whatever the hell they're doing and revert to loyalty to the family. This could be a problem. And so there's all sorts of other complications and plots within plots as various factions are trying to take control and take over and disprove or prove or whatever. And so you have various lunatic and humorous events, and it's all very
good. Is that the remaining family member that came back?
Agatha. Yeah.
That's the one.
And she is unaware of this when she starts. She's learning real fast. And
so she didn't understand her heritage?
No, not initially. She has been shielded from all of this. And as I said, she's learning fast. She's got a learning curve like that. And things are going crazy. The latest book collection is coming out in another month. Larry has copies of the first dozen or so of these in the dealer's room, including a hardbound compilation of the first 3 books in 1 volume, which is worth getting. He has a small trade paperback, black and white, of the first couple of books, which, if you're not sure about taking the plunge, is worth getting. It's like 10, 15 bucks. And, but you will see it and you'll go, oh shit, I shouldn't have gotten that. If nothing else, just get the first full-color book, and then you will be bemoaning the fact that you didn't just blow the rent money and get all of them. You can read them online, and they are just deadly hilarious and wonderful art. I do tend towards the humorous. I like humor. For some odd reason, I'm a goofy sort of person. It shows. Yeah. But,
that's the problem with getting into that.
trying to what?
Paper, man. No, there's just too much stuff out there that you want, but you can't afford.
Well, there's some very good stuff. Like I said, we're having that renaissance. I've said for the last decade, some of the best work that's ever been done is being done now. Strangers in Paradise. Have you read that?
No.
Terry Moore did this, initially published it himself because he couldn't get anybody to look at it. It's a soap opera, but it's a soap opera on a level that no one tried to do before. It's kind of like a soap opera that the Mission Impossible movies would have liked. The same people that did those. Because you have the two women who are the main characters who were somehow enmeshed in a plot that's running in the background that looks more like it should be on some kind of spy mission that involves mafia and crime families, and they're trying to assassinate the president, and what the hell is going on back there? We're just trying to, we just want to try to buy a car.
So you said initially he did this himself because he couldn't find it?
He could not find a
Why do
publisher.
you think it is that so many, especially American publishers, it seems, don't take the genre, don't take the media that seriously, as opposed to someone like a country like Japan, where they'll do anything?
We got locked into that crap back in the 50s, where it was basically classed as inferior minds. You know, you had to have a low IQ to even be looking at the comics, and you know, bending the soul, curving your spine, and lowering your IQ. That's wrong. The graphic medium is the most powerful medium. It combines the best when it's done right now. There's some awful stuff out there. There's some really awful stuff. We won't go into that because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But when it's done properly, it is so powerful. The gentleman who created Santa Claus, Thomas Nast, back at the turn of the last century, he is the guy who did Santa Claus the way we know Santa Claus now, the jolly little fat man. Before Thomas Nast, it was still Father Christmas, the tall, slender Santa Claus. Thomas Nast was also an editorial cartoonist, New York papers, and he came up against Tammany Hall, Boss Tweed, one of the most corrupt administrations in world history. I mean, they literally put a cashier's table inside the door at City Hall. You could register your bride and get the seat. She wouldn't have to carry the cash up the stairs.
Wasn't that nice? Very nice.
Okay. He was doing cartoons, editorial cartoons, about the corruption. They offered him the equivalent in current funds of more than $20 million to stop doing editorial cartoons. And he told him to stop it.
RCHS. All right, hold on, let me get back to you.
Within months, Tammany Hall was broken. Federal agents had seized, literally, physically, with guns. They had Marines take physical control of City Hall. Boss Tweed himself was arrested at the U.S.-Mexico border by customs agents who recognized him from the editorial cartoons. To his dying day, Tweed blamed the cartoons for his downfall. He said, my constituents couldn't read. It was the goddamn funny pictures.
So that's going to that lower IQ again. That mentality.
The Spanish-American War, the Spanish Civil War was started by editorial cartoons done in news dispatches from the front.
Let me ask you this. With the advent of digital publishing versus the resurgence of the graphic novel, who do you think is going to win? I mean, do you think that digital publishing is going to eventually mean the death of the graphic novel, or do you think that the graphic novel and the resurgence of it is actually bolstering the publishing industry against them?
Part of the problem is they're going to have to come out with a better way and a faster way to portray it. Right now, you can go over to half-price books and get the Silver Age Archie comics on disc. And it's actually fairly decent. Okay? I bought them. I mean, hell, getting 500 comics on a disc for $6. Why not? I kind of like those. I mean, they're not the best read in the world, but hey, it beats having a box of them. One little disc. But it's difficult to read. It doesn't format properly to the screen.
That's what it's like.
Yeah, and you're going to have trouble as long as you don't have standardized format. Okay, it's like the railroad tracks back when they were first doing railroads. They had half a dozen different formats of how wide the tracks were, and how wide the ties were, and how wide the bars of the rails themselves were, and how far apart the ties were, and how thick the wheels were on the trains. And you literally have to go, you know, especially in Europe, okay, you're literally taking a train from here to right here, and you've got to stop and offload everything and put it on this train. And with some of the countries, it was, you know, screw it, I'm just putting them on wagons. Yeah, it's slower, but I'm not taking 5 hours to offload everything and reload it on another train. You know, why bother? Because I can't get my train to go from here to here. I have to go from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. And with all the offloadings, it's just not worth it. And that's why they passed those draconian standardization acts in Europe that eventually came over here, and now, with very few exceptions across the planet, rail travel is standardized. If you travel on a train, all the trains, all the wheels are exactly the same width apart. And all the rails themselves are exactly the same thickness, and all the ties are exactly the same distance apart. And they basically, the companies got together and said, okay, bug this. We're tired of you being egotistical over my rail system is better than yours. Screw it. You're going to do it this way. And if you don't do it this way, we will bomb the hell out of you. They literally got to that point. Actually, I don't think this is a bomb. We just basically won't trade with you, which is even worse. And we're going to have to do something like that.
Well, I mean, it's an issue of translating the actual art to the media.
Oh no, that's easy.
But what concerns me is, you know, will it get to the point where they'll just start switching to using more digital artists to create the graphic novel, which to me would be sad. But
I tell you what,
it's easy.
everything I have seen so far, all the artists I have seen who were pure digital, okay, never had any classical training, are nowhere near as good as the artists who had classical training but have also learned digital art. I think it's got something to do with theory. When I went to art school, we basically went all the way back to stone gears level. Okay, here's a bamboo tube, here's a knife, cut your pen, here, you go make your paper. Okay, and you just built all your own tools, and then you learned how from the ground up. No, you weren't doing that by the second year or the third year. You know, the second and third year students had already progressed past that point. You were buying art pads and you moved on. But the first year students did all that really stupid grunt work. And there was a point to it. You learned the theory. Why are things the way they are? and it's very important. Art is a language. Yeah, I can rush you into learning English by having you recite the works of Toni Morrison. Okay, you can memorize all the current bestsellers you want, and that'll give you a working knowledge of English, but it won't make you fluent, and you won't have a real mastery. You may have to work for another 20 or 30 years at it to get into real mastery. But if I teach you language from the very ground up, then start exposing you to the more complex stuff, you will have that mastery. Whatever you get in the later bits, you will still establish your mastery. And as I said, art is a language. People don't think of it that way.
You don't start painting cubism in the very first thing, or impressionistic painting. You don't do that.
You're preaching to the choir there.
Yeah.
But I can start as, as now we're going to start seeing generations in the future where to correlate to the books, where they're more and more used to the digital media in books, and to them, hardcover books are more of an anachronism.
Sure.
I worry that you'll see the same thing start to happen in the art industry, where that's all that they're used to.
Hopefully there will be a lot of good teachers who will continue to teach.
Yeah, like I said, the advantage, just the raw advantage. I do photo retouch and morphing, okay? I learned airbrush from one of the two guys that invented the airbrush, okay? And it was in-studio work, in person, hands-on, and yeah, I do it on the computer. Okay, all of this work is done on the computer, but I've done airbrush hands-on. I learned the skill, I learned the blending, and I don't do it anymore. From all the theories up here.
Had some sort of mixed up thing.
Okay, I learned my baby words.
That's where the next generation will.
Well,
Right.
it's hard to say, but if they don't, they won't be as good. And I think, well, but the thing is, they're discovering this. Okay, I'm seeing articles. Okay, there was one in
Next weekend.
what is that called? Computer Arts, I think. It was issued before last. Okay, the theme of the article was how far back should you start to learn computer art? Okay, and the point of the article was you can't just go, open Photoshop and start drawing. You should have physical pad. You should be able to take a piece of paper and do things on it. You should have a scanner. You should be able to make the translations. You should be able to work with real world as well as computer world. And you should be able to translate back and forth.
I agree. I just hope that education continues to go out.
Well, but what I said is, there's already a growing movement that realizes that there's a shortage. You're seeing this with companies like Pixar and so on and so forth that are conducting classes for their artists and saying, no, you can't just go, oh, I want a bouncing ball shape to be the basis of this. No, that's not the way it works. You go back and learn the language. And the language of art is, what did we agree that this looks like? See, the secrets of drawing, okay, there's a couple of secrets. One, nobody can draw anything. You can't. It's just not possible. What you do is you establish a shape, form, or whatever on the medium that we agreed represents an object or a form or a concept. That's a language. Just like I say apple, and we have agreed that apple means that red thing that hangs from a tree. Okay? And then we pull it down and eat it. You can't draw an apple. What you do is you create a shape that suggests apple, because we've agreed that there are shapes and forms and et cetera and so forth that mean apple. Do you see? If you get away from that, then your art suffers, because you've gotten away from the basic function of art, the basic concept of drawing, and the basic idea of the language. This is one of the reasons why cartooning is actually, the graphics, is actually the ultimate expression of impressionistic art. Which is one of the things that drives impressionists crazy, because eventually they get to that point and realize it, and they get really distant and grungy old men, hang out in cafes, drink bad coffee, and curse the cartoonists. I've run into them before. It's very ugly.
So it's very interesting in some of my classes. I've taken both fine art and commercial art classes, and I have teachers who are extremely talented in portraiture and other fine arts. And they would tell me that they could not draw a cartoon to save their life.
On the other hand, you take a decent cartoonist, and they can do life drawing like nobody's business. Charles Schultz, for instance. I mean, think about Peanuts. Good God, Peanuts. It looks like it was drawn by a 4-year-old. Okay? Charles Schultz was one of the finest portraitures, English, whatever,
Portrait artists.
Thank you. I didn't get enough sleep last night. But anyway, that you would ever care to meet. He did ink sketches working as a prison guard during World War II of the Nazi prisoners that would just wrench your heart out. Just gorgeous work. If you ever get a chance to see them, definitely take a look and study them. From the guy that does Charlie Brown and Little Loop, and talk to other cartoonists and see how easy it is to do that little Charlie Brown shape. I have a thing called tactical knack. I can, with 3 or 4 samples of anybody's work, I can duplicate it better than they can. And I will tell you right off the bat that Peanuts is one of the hardest strips to duplicate. His talent level was so high that to do it just right.
Yeah, he made it look easy.
He made it look easy. Another one, Gahan Wilson.
What's that?
Gahan Wilson,
Yeah.
horror cartoonist. Have you ever seen him work?
I haven't seen him physically, watched him.
He can actually reproduce any cartoon he's ever drawn freehand, and you can lay it over the cartoon that he previously drew, and it will match.
That's what I think of when I look at Bill Keane, the Family Circus. Always so tight. Very simple lines, but those shapes, those kids' heads.
I think his son's gone insane.
Has he?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
He's doing Dennis the Menace. Whereas Ketchum's son, I think, has also gone insane and is now doing Family Circus.
Really?
Yeah.
Go across the streams.
No. It's weird. Have you noticed?
No, I haven't.
The Family Circus strips are sounding like Dennis the Menace. And Dennis the Menace is now sounding like Family Circus. And it's like, dudes, stop smoking your lunch. Stop talking over ideas. Please stop. Just don't do this. No, please.
Now what kind of mushrooms were you eating, kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, that's just gotten weird. I mean, give up the family business, guys. Just go.
No, but I was going to ask you one thing you're talking about was that, to some extent, technical perfection is needed to good
Technical
art.
proficiency. I won't say perfection because there is no such thing.
Okay.
But there are strips out there that actually are just wondrous and don't have a lot of technical expertise. Barry Ween. Do you remember that one? Okay, they've just put out, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago, The Collected Barry Ween. That was a self-published strip initially, and then Slave Labor Graphics put it out for a while. Idea of the strip, a young boy, 10, 11 years old. Barry is possibly the brightest mind ever produced by the collective minds of mankind. He could be the greatest boon or the greatest threat we have ever faced. He is 10 years old, and this is a year in his life. And he is deciding things. It's one of those strips that on one page will have you laughing to the point where you need a diaper. And on the next page, you will be crying. And it's just, it is amazing. It's Josh Whedon, and it is amazing. He shows intellectual depth that, I'm sorry, a college education isn't quite enough. And at the same time, he's doing slapstick stuff that will send you giggling to grab one of your friends and shove their face in the page. Classical reference, and you just, and he'll just do goofy shit in the middle of it. And I mean, here's a boy, he's 10 years old, and there's nobody in his lifetime, there will be nobody who will ever be more than a child to him. He will never be able to talk to anyone as an equal. He's going to be alone. He will always know what's going to happen during the day. And they won't listen to him. We will not listen. And yet, he's a 10-year-old boy. He wants to be loved. He wants to be cared for. He wants to have friends. He wants to be popular. But he can't let them know what he is. He knows this. And he really knows this. There are people and things that are going to try to take advantage of him. And he knows this too. And it's absolutely amazing. And it just, like I said, slapstick and pathos, and you will laugh and cry. Absolutely wonderful. And go get it. As I said, there's just brilliant work. Oh My Goddess, Beluga Manga, just celebrated their 40th book. 40 books long. This guy has been writing and drawing this story for 30 years. I mean, think about that, spending 30 years on an illustrated story. That's just amazing.
Do the characters get any older?
Yeah, they're growing.
Now, I mean, I didn't know if they did The Simpsons and Mark's still in the 4th grade after 25 years.
No. This is, technically it's what they call a harem comedy. And in reality, it's a deep study of what the hell it means to be an honest man. Our lead character is basically stuck in the frat house when his friends have all gone off to party. And he's trying to call the number one of them gave him if he gets a call. He's trying to call his buddy to tell him, yeah, you got a call. And he gets the wrong number. And the voice on the line says, got a service? You know, can I help you? And he's like, oh, shit, I'm sorry, you know. And all of a sudden, this woman emerges from the mirror in front of him. And he thinks this is a gag, that the guys at the frat are pulling this. Turns out to be an actual angel from heaven. And because he's a pure soul, because he's been a good person, they're going to give him a wish. He can wish for anything. He can wish for the end of the world. He's got that much celestial credit. And he thinks this is all bullshit. And the only thing he can think of is that he's been left here all alone, and he's never had any success with women, and, you know, there's this gorgeous woman, and yeah, right, well, if I had a wish, I'd wish that somebody just like you would stay with me for the rest of my life. And she looks at him for a second and kind of laughs and says, yeah, I told you anything, but I don't think. And there's a bolt of lightning and this beam of light and crackles and everything, and she looks around and goes, wait a second, and takes the phone and makes a call and looks at him. It was granted. And now she's going to be with him forever, or at least till the end of his life. Which is good because they fall in love and so on and so forth. But anything that tries to separate them, even them, faces the full fury and force of heaven. Anything, like when the frat guys come back and announce that she's not allowed to stay in the frat house because there's no women allowed. So they both get booted out. Or a jealous rich girl decides that she's going to try to steal him away from Belle Dandy, the angel, and starts having a series of progressively more dangerous accidents, incidents, up to and including having a meteor total her Mercedes-Benz. And just, you know, stranger and stranger things happen. And then her sisters... Oh, yeah. And her sisters show up. Erd, the half-demon. And her little sister, who's a techno geek. And just all sorts of just crazy stuff. And he is totally innocent and a gentleman, and she is totally innocent and good. And they're having this very, very slowly creeping together relationship. They're getting closer and closer. And it's wonderful, and it's beautiful, and it's innocent, and gorgeous artwork. I've actually had the privilege of doing some artwork for the American company that publishes it, Dark Horse. And beautiful stuff. Their stuff. I like to think my stuff is good, right? Wonderful. They produced the Golden Book on with the 30th book, and it has full color versions of the stories. Some selected stories that tell you a lot about the characters. And they made it cheap just to get people up to speed on the story so you don't have to go back and buy all 30 volumes. But, but there's some beautiful stuff out there. Some wonderful things.
I've always been a fan of the original.
I liked the first series. When Wendy Penny basically was doing an analog of her own life, that had some very heartfelt material in it, and it was gorgeous.
Every single thing available online now for free.
I actually got to sit down and talk with her at an airport about putting that stuff together and running that once. And she was quite candid about it. It is an analog of
I met both of them when they did a book tour. When they came here and they were at the Great Escape here in Louisville. And I love wolves. And of course the main character elves are wolf riders. And I had to ask Richard, I said, why did you choose wolves? And Richard basically said, they're so cool. I mean, obviously there's a little more to it than that. I mean, that was his answer in a nutshell.
They're the big puppies. But any questions out there? It's just been him and me mostly battling, with the occasional drop in from
I'll
you.
drop in a little here and there.
I'll let her. You said that.
You talked about manga versus
Yeah.
kind of the American thing, and it seems to me that in America it's very driven by the artist, whereas sometimes I feel like if you have something that's running for 30 years, how much of that is just being driven by the audience? I mean, I know that you can spend 30 years telling a story, but...
Well, the thing is, you're allowed... See, graphic novels, graphic storytelling is an accepted field over there. It's like theater, or movies, or radio, or something. You want to do a drama? Well, I could do it on the radio, or I could do it as a graphic story, or, whatever. One of the things that's not commonly understood, Rumiko Takahashi, okay? Who knows the name here? One person. Rumiko Takahashi is the best-selling author on the planet, the best-selling living author on the planet. She is coming up on her 2 billionth novel. 2 billion books. And that's just the legal copies. That doesn't count the black market illegal copies. And that's worldwide sales. That makes Stephen King look like my sales. Okay, that shoves him down on the scale with me. Okay, he's down here together with me. 2 billion books. Okay, when she hit 1 billion a decade ago, her publisher literally rented the Tokyo Tower, the whole friggin' building, for a party, and let her choose any entertainer she wanted for the party. She is so popular in Japan, she can't go get her own groceries. She can choose whatever project she wants. She can draw, write, whatever she wants. Yet in this country, they don't even think of her as a creative individual, as a working person. Ron One Half, Rooming Theater, I forgot what the horror title is, something with it.
Mermaid's Tale.
I'm sorry?
Mermaid's Tale.
Mermaid's Tale, but what's the new one that everybody was hot for? It's got a yellow cover in the graphic novels.
I don't know, but she also did Maison Koku, Inuyasha.
Koku was one of my favorites. What was the one?
Inuyasha.
Inuyasha, that's it. Inuyasha was a big breakthrough here, and all of a sudden they knew who she was. Maison Koku is just absolutely hilarious. It is worth picking up Maison Koku, at least in the graphic novel format, if you can. It's a soap opera type thing. Young boy flunked his exam, was trying to get into college several times in a row. Was trying his family's patience. Going to make that one big last push, that try, and staying in a crazy apartment house where the inhabitants, you don't know whether they're on his side or really out to sink him. He's got a crush on the apartment manager, who's a widow, and all sorts of things are getting in the way and just driving him nuts. And it's worth all reading through all the misery and all the craziness. It's funny, but it's kind of weird in this strange Japanese way. You learn a lot about Japanese culture and all these oddballs and nuts that he's forced to cope with and all the stuff that he's putting up with. And you get to that last book in the series, and you discover that all the books, all the little stories, come together because they were all Shaggy Dog jokes. And the last book is the punchlines to all the jokes she's been telling all along. And it all leads together. And it was, apparently the series ran for like 8 or 9 years in Japan. And you finally get through all these Shaggy Dog jokes, and here's your punchlines in the last book, and it's hilarious. Up till then, it's interesting and kind of weird. What the heck is going on? And oh God, you didn't. Yes, you did. Oh God, she did that too. Okay. And it's like, you know, she set up all these little straw men, and she just knock that one down, knock that one down, knock that one down. And it's just this beautiful melange of targets that she set up, and it's just a wonderful piece of craft. The good Lord, you know, Renee, she just started doing, if you've seen that one. Beautiful work, wonderful work. And there's so many of these. There's a lot of disdain in this country for manga and anime. I think a lot of it is based on what I call Dragon Ball syndrome. The idea that all of this stuff is either porn, people who want to have sex with underage girls, or it's a series of fights with steadily bigger opponents until it gets to the final battle where they kill the boss. And that's just some kind of video game weirdness. Dragon Ball got to be kind of like that because it lasted for so long because it was making money, and so they just kept creating bigger and bigger monsters for Goku to beat up on. I mean, hell, you're getting paid $1 million. What are you going to do? Well, I'm not taking $1 million for next year. I'm tired. No, barely is all right. But no, over there you can literally make a career of it and keep working on it. You hire assistants and keep the system running.
Do you think it was more story-driven than it is here?
Yeah, almost definitely.
It's kind of like animation over there. They just have a different mentality about it. I mean, they do things there that we wouldn't consider here to do animation.
Yeah, the thing is, you see, you're not locked into the superhero cycle or, you know, you have to do such and such a format. Over there, you want to do a sports manga, you want to do a romance manga, you want to do a manga about playing Go. Yeah. Whatever.
I mean, more flexible system.
Another way, right, just another outlet.
I mean, my wife got hooked into one that was all about a young man who inherited a haunted Go board, learned how to play Go from the ghost, and started entering Go tournaments.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice series, very interesting series, and very cool. We have a whole series of books. And, you know, very suspenseful. It's all about a kid learning to play Go. I mean, for God's sake, would you try to sell that here? Good heavens. And that's another problem we have. I call it middle management. There's a strata that comes in and says, okay, I don't think that'll sell. We won't publish it. You, as the public, are not allowed to decide what you're going to buy.
Well, it's the same, it's the Hollywood attitude of high concept.
Not even that. They won't even present. They won't even allow the things to be presented. Okay? There's this thin layer that prevents things from getting through to the makers, to the sellers. Their assistants look at it and go, I'm not going to waste their time with that. And it doesn't matter even if you've presented something that's successful. I will give you a good example. Joshua Quagmire and Cutie Bunny. Probably never heard of it. Okay, back in the late 70s, Joshua Quagmire did a comic book called Cutie Bunny. Hilarious. He was basically doing parodies of movies and TV shows using this slightly sexy bunny rabbit. And she would get in trouble, and she had a somewhat friend, somewhat nemesis, who was the fox, and they had various other encounters with Russian spies and various little cartoon-like adventures, and it was cute, and it was very, very funny. And he went from con to con selling this, and he was selling 2,000 to 3,000 copies of an issue. He couldn't get distribution to save his life. Why? Because the distributors knew that what the public wanted was superheroes or horror. They did not, oh no, it's been the flavor for a long time. And if they didn't want that, they wanted raw sex, porn. They didn't want a little bit of pin-up art with no real sex and a lot of humor. That wouldn't sell. And despite the fact that, like I said, he was selling 2,000 to 3,000 copies, just going to a con every other weekend, that didn't mean anything. He was obviously selling those to his friends.
You've got that many friends?
Another example, very famous comic strip, Little Nemo. European artist Milo Manara did a parody of it, Little Ego. In Europe, it was a bestseller. It was on the bestseller list. It was an adult comic strip. Basically, instead of having the little boy who goes to sleep and has dreams that are affected by how he winds up falling out of bed, it was a young, rather nubile woman who has rather erotic dreams that are influenced by the way she gets tangled up in the sheets or whatever and falls out of bed. Very well done art, very beautifully done, very tasteful, very nice. And as I said, it was on the bestseller list in Europe in 7 different languages, and I think it was on the list for like a year or so. And it's in English. Okay, bring it over here to the United States. 5,000 copies. They couldn't get it in anywhere. I mean, stores would not take it. Everyone was just, no, that was out there. Americans aren't going to buy that. Nothing. And finally, a wholesaler out in California, who's since gone out of business, bought the remaining stock, which was all but about 100 copies, and put it in his catalog. And they disappeared. Literally. The first catalog came out, and people looked at that and said, damn, give me one. And he himself went and commissioned more printings, got to like 12 printings. And somebody finally looked and said, you sold how many of those? Good God, we can't let him do that. And they finally went back and started putting them in the bookstores. But I think it went for like 7 or 8 years before somebody finally said, oh shit, he's actually making money, but he's supporting his publishing business just on this one book.
Hey, one point against me though is how much stuff, like you said, published in Europe. Because I look at heavy metal and it seemed like, you know, when I think about a copy of heavy metal, look at some of the comics in there, it looks like they started in the middle of a story somewhere.
The Europe, don't even get me started on European style comic. Over there, actually, it's not heavy metal over there. It's called Screaming Harlot. It's screaming metal.
Oh.
But they didn't think it would sell here.
Well, if it's translated to English, I think they do quite well, a lot of it.
I've always wanted to start a magazine here and call it Screaming Metal just to see what they would do. Just to see if it would sell better. But I bought the first couple of years of heavy metal and then realized, oh, these are really depressing. And I've just never gone back.
No, Yeah, the cartoon, the animated cartoon, Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
It was pretty down, kind of pretty downbeat too.
Yeah, I went to the first one in the theater, and then somebody gave me free tickets to the second one, and I literally walked out in the first 20 minutes.
How bad was, I mean, just give me an idea, was it as bad as
The art,
as I imagine Twilight is?
the artwork wasn't. I mean, at least the artwork in the first one was good.
No.
But the artwork in the second one was like we did this over the weekend.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah. Didn't you get the feeling like they kind of knocked that together? And, yeah, I got some film.
Yeah, they saw an opportunity to make a few more bucks off of it. Let's just throw something together that it's got the Heavy Metal name, people will see it.
Well, nowadays, it
And
seems
the
like
sad thing was that they were probably right. They're probably going to be a chunk of change off it. Because I'm sure they didn't invest much in production value, that's for sure.
Yeah, actually, go Google Bjorn's Quest. There's an animation studio that's doing experimental animation, doing some really great stuff. And Bjorn's Quest itself will knock your socks off. The artwork is beautiful. The story is one of those stories that you don't know whether to laugh or cry. Is this poor old Norse warrior who's looking for this final battle. He must fall in battle to get into the halls. You know, he must ascend, but he has to fall in battle, and he can't find a foe. Every time he locates someone to fight, they get taken out.
The game was back that way, I'm
And
sorry.
he's never going to get to Valhalla. And you know, it just starts getting ridiculous, and then just things happen. But it's one of those that you're just rooting for him. You know, please, Bjorn, make it. Poor Bjorn, he's trying his hard. He's not an evil man. He's just let him find somebody who can kill him. Horrible Bjorn. But they've got a bunch of animation on there. They've got a superhero one that makes you want to go to the bathroom. I swear to God, it does. At the end of it, you're just going, oh, I don't even want to put it on hold. I'll watch the credits, but I'm going to go to the bathroom first. It does. Okay, I ruined everyone's lives. I'm going to go put the kitten in the blender now. Thank you all for showing up. They've come to the door several times and tell us we're all done. I think it's accuracy to it, but
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Anytime.
none of this has made much sense, and I hope we're just giving you some places to look and things to buy. Anyone who wants to come into the dealer's room, I'll show you where all the goodies are.
Sensible. Smells good. This is a good thing.